Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Sarah from Handmade After Dark. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Australia, and welcome to Fun Fold Friday. So this is my monthly Fun Fold class, and you don't need to worry about writing down measurements, score lines, that sort of stuff. If you head over to handmadeafterdark.com.au, sign up to my newsletter. The Wednesday following each month's class, I will send out a recipe card with all the products used, photos, and the measurements. So you'll have all of those in the one document. There's also a link to this video, so you've got quick and easy access to the video if you need to watch it again. And if you happen to be watching this later, so it is what is this good? Mid-December. So the email will go out on the Wednesday following. So if you're watching this later, so that email has already gone out, sign up to my email list anyway, then you'll get all the future months project recipes as well as my Thursday check recipe cards. But sign up and then just shoot me an email and I'll send you the recipe card for this project. Just let me know the one that you want after you've signed up and I'll send that through to you. That's absolutely fine. All right, so this month's project is a diorama card. I will switch my camera over and we can take a look. So this is the one we are doing today. So diorama card sits up on its own. And so for this one, I've got a message and some stamping on the inside, but then so you can write your message, you've got the back. And this folds flat and you can send this in a regular sized envelope. Alrighty, so a little bit of scoring for this one, but all relatively straightforward. So we want to start with half a piece of A4. So just cut, if you think the other piece is there, you're cutting on the short side. So you've got a long piece rather than the standard portrait card base. But we do need to trim it very slightly. So this is 29.7. We want to make this 29.6. So we are cutting a very tiny amount off, but if we don't, it means that we have some very funky and near impossible score lines to do. It'll be things like 10.25 and that sort of thing. So that is a pain and very difficult to do accurately. So we're just going to trim a tiny little bit off. And then I'm just going, but remember, all of these score measurements are in the recipe card. So the first one is at 1.3 and then 2.6. Then you come across to 12.2. 13.5. 14.8. Now, the next one is 16.1, but if you have the Stampin' Trimmer, because of where the arm folds out, trying to find 16.1 on there is near impossible to do accurately. So we are going to flip this around and we are going to start back from the 1.3 and we're going to do the first 4. So we'll come back to 1.3 and then 2.6, 12.2, and 13.5. And I've got that right. Yes, we have, so you can see all the score lines along the middle and either side. So in the recipe card, I'll give the measurements, the sort of standard going from one side to the other, but then I'll include a note to flip it around and start from the other side, particularly if you've got the stamp and trimmer. So then we just want to fold on all the score lines. And so you're going to fold forward and back. Don't worry too much if you don't get the right direction for each one, because you're probably going to end up folding back and forth a bit anyway, and it's not going to be a problem. So what we want, so we folded the card base in the middle. So that's that one there. And then you want to fold back and then forward. So it's like a little concertina. And then on the other end, so the second one in, you'll fold over, so mountain fold, and then the end one you fold back. But if you've done it in the wrong order, that's fine. Just fold it back the other way. It's not going to be a problem. So it's going to end up looking like that. All right. So this one is going to be the front. So just flatten that out a bit first. And I have pre-cut my designer series paper and the snowflakes. So the designer series paper is from the Peaceful Garden paper, and then the snowflakes are from the Snowflake Kisses die set. And for the stamps, I've used a mix of Snowy Delights and Delicate Pines, but you can use whatever you've got. So first thing we want to do is we want to stick this one down. So this paper runs, so you may want to just double check before you stick it down, because it runs the full length top to bottom, but a small gap on either side. So just make sure you've got it the right way around, and you may find you need to trim ever so slightly. I think I do on that one. I might just do that now, even though I'm probably going to end up not getting it quite right, but we'll just trim it. We can always cut it later. So that's fine. It needs a bit more, but we'll deal with that later. So what we need to do, I'm using the Stylish Shapes dies for this, and you don't have to go with a circle. You can go with whatever shape you want. I'm going with the second largest circle. And so once this is stuck down, we are going to die cut the circle. But what I want to do, because I want to be able to use both the die cut circle for the DSP and the cardstock separately, I'm going to, and it would help if I flip the paper over to the side that I'm actually going to add the glue to, not the wrong side. I'm going to stick that down, or just place it down, it's not stuck, just as a bit of a placeholder. And I'm going to add adhesive all around it, but just not inside. So hopefully, if I get my alignment right when I actually come to die cut, the center won't stick to the cardstock. So I'll have the die cut circle and the DSP circle left over, which I can then use on another project. Haven't decided what that will be just yet, but that's the plan. Of course, if you don't care, don't want to, you can just add adhesive all the way through and die cut. So I will take that off. And we will stick this bit down. And just line it up. And push it right up to the edge, and then I'll trim the top off later because it's a tiny bit too long. We can deal with that later. So now that that is stuck down, I'll bring in the cut and emboss. And we want the first two plates, the cutting plate, or the first cutting plate. And we're just going to line that up. And I realize I'm just ever so slightly out of view, but haven't got a lot of room in front of me. So just line it up so it is centered, or as close as you can get. And I'll try not to throw the rest of my paper onto the floor, which is what is currently happening. Put the second plate over the top. Because it's 2 layers, I'm just going to run it forward and then back. This gives it an extra pass through, which helps when you've got an extra layer. So that is through, and see, I've got my two pieces for later. And we have the die cut centers. So let's move these out of the way. So let's bring this back in. Then we can do the rest of the decorating. So it's a lot easier to stick the paper down before you sort of put everything together. I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive that went out the side there. The adhesive remover is a wonderful tool. The other option, if you get adhesive where you don't want it, is your embossing buddy. And I will probably use that with some of the die cut elements later, so I can show you that then if you haven't seen it before. All right, so let's stick these little strips down before I lose them. So I'm just going to bring my silicone mat in because we will need that for the die cuts as well soon. So just add the adhesive. You could also use tear and tape for these little strips. It's a good width for it. So this one is going on the end piece. And again, this one runs top to bottom, and there is a very small gap either side. It's very fine, and I'll probably need to trim that one as well. That's fine. I'll get everything stuck down first, and then we can trim. I'd much prefer it to be slightly too big or too long than not long enough. And then this one is going on the outer edge. Yeah, top to bottom, slight gap. Just make sure, particularly with this one, that your strip is narrow enough that it's not going to end up being sort of bent on the score line. If it's a bit too long, you may find it gets a little bit creased. So just double check before you stick it down. You may want to cut it back or cut a 1 centimeter strip rather than, these are actually 1.1, but you may want to go back to 1, particularly for that end. All right, now let's do the stamping so we can stick these down. So these pieces, they are the same size and there's a slight border all the way around. So just double check the orientation before you start stamping. So the first one, and I will bring in my scrap. We're going to stamp these sentiments. So there's 2 lines to that, and then a couple of other images. I did in my original one have a few extra bits of stamping sort of around the edges, but it's kind of optional because you can't see it all that well. Actually, I need the other one first, don't I? Yes. So you may decide to skip it because you can't see it all that well. I'm just going to check that this, oops, that was silly. Let's try again. Just clean that off. I think it is about time to replace my Misty Moonlight stamp pad. It's not working as well as it should, and it's not a case of needing re-inking. It's a very old ink pad, I should point out. It's not new by any means. All right. So we're just going to go, and keep in mind that you don't want this right up at the top because it needs to fit in line with the circle. So you want it about there. And hopefully I've got that about right. And then go with the other one. And that one is just going to go underneath. And then using Pretty Peacock, I have so this one is from Delicate Pines. So I'm going to put one of these up the top. Try and roughly line up one down the bottom. Now you can add more stamping. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it, but so I did add some in the corners, but obviously when you're looking at the card front on, you can't see it. You may still want to add it, that's fine. For this one, I will leave it as is. And then for the back piece, and again, I'm using Pretty Peacock, shouldn't have put that away. And these ones are all from there it is, the Delicate Pines. Couldn't find the ones I needed. Let's just check that this one does need re-inking, and I forgot to do it before I started. And of course, I'm ending up with ink everywhere that I do not want it, which is partly why my hands are currently covered in ink. So this one is going up the top. And then I'm adding this one down the bottom here. And snowflake. Let's wipe that off just in case. And that one's going down the bottom. Righty. And I'm just going to put my hands a little bit of a clean, just with some isopropyl alcohol, which is useful for getting ink off your fingers, at least enough to generally prevent you spreading it all over your work most of the time, until you can give them a proper clean later. So hopefully that will be enough. And I should move all of my stamps out of the way, as I haven't cleaned them yet. So I don't want the ink all over the place. All right, so we are going to stick this one on the inside. Remembering there is a slight border around all sides on this piece. And hopefully, yep, we can, once that's opened, we can see that, so that's good. And then this one for the back. There we go. So that's that part done. Now, before we stick anything together, I'm going to trim all of these overhanging pieces. Get them off the scissors. Go, that's better. Now, it's up to you whether you put all the snowflakes on now and then stick this together, or if you stick it together first and then attach the snowflakes. I did the card first, then the snowflakes, but you may prefer the other way, and that's absolutely fine. I will do the card first. So where you've got the middle score line, we're going to add some adhesive along here. And once again, tear and tape is also a really good option for this one. And I'm going to press this, so press that down and then press over in the middle. Because the main thing with this one, when you stick it together, is you want to make sure that it will fold flat so that you can stick it in an envelope. And then I'll just fold back on one end just to press it down a bit more, and also make sure there's no adhesive where we don't want it. And then I'm going to add adhesive to this side. So this is on the inside end. And then I'm going to press this down, folding the card flat. So fold down on all those score lines to flatten it. And that way you can make sure that it will fold flat. So it'll still fold up as you want it. You can fold on all the score lines so that it will open up the way you want, and then it will fold flat for posting. All right, now we need to stick the snowflakes on. So I die cut these ahead of time so you don't have to sit and watch me die cut them all, because that's no fun. So I have, once I get them out, I have that one, and what was the other one I was going with? Going with that one. And then we have 4 of the little ones. Now, if you're making this, whatever embellishments you're sticking on, I've got a few spares there. The main thing to be mindful of is making sure that, particularly the bottom of the card, nothing overhangs, because if when someone stands up the card, it needs to be able to sit flat. So if you've got anything overhanging the bottom, it won't. And also, you've probably got a tiny bit of room at the top, but you don't want to go too far, because when you put it in an envelope, then it may not. If you've gone too far, you may not be able to close the envelope. But the sides are absolutely fine, because when it sits up, it's not going to be catching on anything. They're not going to get squished. And when it's flattened for postage, again, it's not going to be in the way or preventing anything from closing properly. So be mindful of the top and the bottom, but the sides are fair game. Now, just be mindful when you are adding the adhesive to these that you don't want adhesive everywhere, because there are bits overhanging, and you'll probably still get some bits here and there, but that's all right. We can deal with those. So I recommend the silicone mat and a dauber. I keep one just for adhesive. You definitely don't want to be mixing an ink one with an adhesive one. And then, so once I've worked out roughly where I want everything to go, so for this one, I've got basically just the tip of that one that I want to avoid putting adhesive on. And then grab my dauber, get some of the ink, and just dab all over the embellishment. And so for anyone who's never done something like this before, the reason you want the silicone mat and not, say, just a piece of grid paper or something like that is if you do this on paper, it will stick. But the silicone, it will just come right off, and so you won't end up tearing anything. It'll just come off nice and easily. Plus, when the glue dries, you can just peel it off. So it's a much better option. And then for this one, basically the 2 tips there, I'm just going to move down to a spot where I don't have adhesive at this point, just to minimize how much I get on the front of the snowflake. Oops. That one up. And then this one is going to sit about there. So it's just that front tip, and I've got a little, I have a little I think that's a dimensional backing, but I have a spare, so that is fine. So just the tip there that we want to avoid. Oops. Just make sure I've got the right one without adhesive. I've got adhesive all over my fingers now, so I can't tell. I think it's that one. Righty, so that's the top part done. Just get some of this adhesive off my fingers so it doesn't stick to everything. And we'll just check, take that off, check the placement of these. So that one is going in the corner there. So it's just this little bit here, and I need a little bit more adhesive. And I'll move back up here, and I've just noticed I have a couple of little bits to punch out first. There we go. Now, one thing I should say, if you're not confident particularly with the adhesive, and you think you're going to get lots of adhesive in areas that you don't want it and will need to try and remove it, you may prefer to stick the snowflakes down first before you put the card together, because it will just make it a little bit easier to get the embossing buddy in the right spots to get to deal with the adhesive. But it can still be done, just a little bit easier, particularly if you've never done it before. So that one's going there. We just want to, probably should avoid it on the other side as well, but we'll deal with that later. Take that one down. And then the final one, keep the top down. So it's just those two. And do I have enough left? I might just be able to pick up enough bits from some of the others. Maybe not pick up just get a tiny bit more. And get rid of that extra bit of glimmer. Everything is sticking to my hands now. All right, that should be enough if I can pick it up. All righty. Let's make sure that's all stuck down. That's looking good. I'll move that out of the way. And I'll just get some of this adhesive off my hands. So isopropyl alcohol is very, very good for this, or hand sanitizer. If you've got some lying around, it's very useful for getting bits of adhesive off your hands. And believe me, I end up with quite a lot. I use far too much. I just like to make sure everything is well stuck. All right, so we can move these out of the way. So if you've got adhesive in areas where you don't want it, your embossing buddy is your best friend. So a little tricky when you've put the card together, but it can still be done, and you don't need a lot. So basically, you just want to dab, you just want a little bit of the cornstarch underneath. So you may want to bring it in and just dab your pieces onto it. And if you need to, you can always flip it upside down and it'll get a bit more of the powder out. But this way should be sufficient, but this is why it can be a lot easier to do this bit before you stick the card together. I don't actually have too much underneath. I do have a little bit on this side though. And then if you find you've got, particularly if you have, because it's white powder, I think it's possibly cornstarch. And particularly when you're working with darker cardstock, you just dust it off and it's fine. And I'm actually going to dab some over the top just because there is a little bit of adhesive on the top. And so I want to get that off. Don't worry about how it looks at the moment. No. I will bring in my brush. Just brush it all off. That was a bit down the side there. So that is looking good to go, and it's no longer sticky on the top, which is nice. You do need to, particularly if you're working with darker cardstock, you will need to give it a decent brush to get the powder off, but it will come off. Alrighty, let's get these out of the way. And I will show you the other one that I made. So I did a birthday one. So this one I did very little stamping on the inside. I've just got the sentiment. Don't know how well you can see, there is the flower on the inside. And so I've die cut a couple of the flowers and one of the leaf sets from this is the Charming Day bundle, and colored them with blends. If I was doing another one of these, I would probably adjust the stamp on the inside and just rotate it a bit so that the flower is close to the top, just because it is kind of hidden a bit by the die cuts there, but it's fine. The birthday sentiment is the main thing I wanted. And also the flower, I actually triple stamped off that because I didn't want it super dark. So it's triple stamped off with the Blackberry Bliss. And then on the back, I've just got the flower, and then plenty of space for people to write their messages. Alrighty, so, oh, one thing I forgot for this one, we need to add, speaking of embellishments, using the faceted snowflakes, and we need to add. So I'll go with a larger one on that one. Try not to bend that back. Smaller one on this little one here. If it won't stick, come on. Go. And of course, you can always add more if you want. So that is that one. Let me bring, oh, let's bring them both back in. Alrighty, so these are the two samples that I have for the diorama card. And remember, if you head to my blog at handmadeafterdark.com.au and sign up to my newsletter, I will the recipe card for these will come out Wednesday following. But if you are watching this later, so if it's later than sort of mid-December, send me, once you've signed up, just send me an email and I will, and let me know which video you've been watching, and I will send you through that recipe card. Alrighty, thank you so much for watching. If you do have a go at these, I would love to see what you come up with. So please share. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you're watching this on YouTube. It really helps me out and I do appreciate it. All the details and links to the products used are also in the description for the video on YouTube. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or if there's anything I can help you with. But until next time, happy crafting. Bye.